The nurse's shoes squeaked against the linoleum as she walked away, leaving me alone in a room that smelled of disinfectant and someone else's fear. Through the barred window, I could see the taxi pulling away from the hospital entrance, my daughter's silhouette in the back seat growing smaller until it disappeared completely. That's when I understood. They weren't coming back for me. And in that moment, sitting on a narrow bed in a psychiatric facility 7,000 miles from home, I made a decision that would change all our lives forever. My name is Margaret, though everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 63 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I understood my place in the world. I raised 2 children, mostly on my own after my husband David died when our youngest, Claire, was only 12. David had been a contractor, solid and dependable, and he'd left us the house in Connecticut and a modest life insurance policy that I stretched like elastic for 15 years. I worked as a school administrator, clipping coupons, buying store brands, making sure my kids, Michael and Claire, had what they needed, even when I went without. Michael, my oldest, married young to a woman named Vanessa who came from money. Real money. The kind where you summer in the Hamptons and winter in Aspen. I liked Vanessa well enough at first, though she had a way of looking at our kitchen table, the one David built himself, as if it might give her splinters just by being near it. They had 2 children, my grandchildren, whom I saw 3, maybe 4 times a year, despite living only 40 minutes apart. Claire was different. Softer. She became a nurse, married a kind man named Tom, and they had a little girl, Emma, who was 7 now. Claire called me every Sunday. She remembered my birthday. She was the one who noticed when I started forgetting things. It began small. I'd lose my car keys, find them in the refrigerator. I'd forget appointments, repeat stories. At 63, I told myself it was normal aging, the kind of thing everyone jokes about at book club. But Claire worried. She scheduled a doctor's appointment, drove me there herself, held my hand in the waiting room. The diagnosis was early-stage cognitive decline, not full dementia, the doctor stressed, manageable with medication, routine, support. I could still live independently, still drive during the day, still be myself. I just needed to be more careful, more organized, maybe have someone check in on me regularly. Claire offered immediately to help coordinate my care. Michael said he'd think about options. Vanessa went quiet in that particular way wealthy people do when they're calculating something. What none of them knew, what I'd never told anyone except my lawyer, was that David's life insurance had been more substantial than I'd let on. I'd been careful, frugal, investing quietly with the help of a financial advisor David had trusted. Over 20 years, that modest policy and my own savings had grown into just over $800,000. Not a fortune, but security, dignity, independence. I'd planned to tell my children eventually, include them in estate planning, split everything fairly. But something had always stopped me. Some instinct I couldn't name. Now I wish I'd trusted that instinct sooner. The conversation happened on a Thursday afternoon in April. Michael had invited me to lunch at his house, unusual enough that I'd worn my good blouse and brought cookies I'd baked that morning with Claire's help. Vanessa served salad on plates that probably cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Michael poured sparkling water from a glass bottle. They were both smiling, that careful kind of smile people wear when they're about to sell you something. "Mom," Michael started, folding his hands on the table, "Vanessa and I have been talking about your situation." "My situation?" I repeated. "Your diagnosis," Vanessa clarified, her voice honey-smooth. "We know how hard this must be for you, and we want to help." Michael leaned forward. "We think it would be better, safer, if you came to stay with us for a while, just until we figure out the best long-term care plan." I set down my fork. I'm managing fine at home. Claire checks on me 3 times a week. I have my medication schedule, my routines. Claire has her own family, Vanessa interrupted gently. A young child. It's not fair to burden her with this level of care. And honestly, Maggie, living alone in that big old house, what if something happens? What if you fall or forget to turn off the stove? The doctor said I'm capable of independent living, I said, hearing my voice go tight. With support, which I have. Michael exchanged a glance with Vanessa. We've actually been researching facilities. There's an excellent care community in Arizona. I'm not going to Arizona. Or, he continued as if I hadn't spoken, there are some innovative programs overseas. Switzerland has incredible medical care. So does Portugal. The costs are actually much more reasonable than here in the States. Something cold slid down my spine. Overseas? Just something to consider, Vanessa said, reaching across to pat my hand. The gesture felt rehearsed. We want what's best for you. And frankly, we're concerned about your assets. That house is old, probably needs expensive repairs. Your finances, well, it would be irresponsible not to make sure everything is protected, properly managed. There it was, the word that made everything clear. Assets. How do you know about my finances? I asked quietly. Michael had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mom, I'm your son. I have a right to make sure you're taken care of. I spoke to your bank, explained the situation. You had no right. I stood up, my hands shaking. My finances are my business. Not if you're mentally incompetent, Vanessa said, and the honey was gone from her voice now. Not if you're making decisions that could harm yourself or squander resources that should be preserved for everyone's future. I left without finishing my salad, without saying goodbye to my grandchildren playing in the other room. I drove home carefully, precisely, my hands tight on the wheel, and called Claire the moment I walked through my door. But Michael and Vanessa had been busy. The legal papers arrived by courier 1 week later. Michael had filed for emergency guardianship, claiming I was a danger to myself due to cognitive decline. He'd submitted doctor's notes, selectively quoted, and statements from neighbors I barely knew, people who'd apparently seen me wandering confused or behaving erratically. I'd been checking my mailbox twice in one day because I'd forgotten the first time. I'd asked my neighbor's name because I'd momentarily blanked. Normal mistakes spun into evidence of incompetence. Claire hired a lawyer for me, paid for it herself. But Michael had resources, Vanessa's family money behind him, expensive attorneys who knew how to play the system. They painted a picture of a confused old woman sitting on assets she couldn't manage in a house she couldn't maintain, refusing reasonable help out of stubborn pride. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, my bank accounts were frozen pending the court's decision. Michael's lawyers had argued I might dissipate assets or make imprudent transfers. I couldn't access my own money. I couldn't pay my bills. Claire covered my groceries, my medication, slipping me cash like I was a teenager again. The humiliation burned worse than the fear. We'll fight this, Claire kept saying, her jaw set in that stubborn way she'd inherited from David. We'll get a cognitive evaluation from an independent doctor. We'll show you're competent. This is elder abuse, Mom, financial exploitation. But I could see the worry in her eyes. She had Emma, and Tom's job was stable but not lucrative. She couldn't afford a prolonged legal battle against Michael's deep pockets. 2 days before the hearing, Michael came to my house. He stood in my living room, David's living room, and made his offer. This doesn't have to be ugly, he said. The hearing, the publicity, dragging this through court, it's bad for everyone. Bad for you, embarrassing for the family. I have a better solution. I waited. I'd learned not to fill Michael's silences anymore. There's a private care facility in Portugal. Incredible place, beautiful campus, excellent staff. They specialize in cognitive issues, and the cost is a fraction of what you'd pay here. You'd sign a medical power of attorney, temporary, just while you're receiving treatment, and I'd handle your finances, make sure everything is properly managed. After a few months, once you're stabilized, we could reassess. And if I refuse? He sighed, like I was being deliberately difficult. Then we go to court. And Mom, I'll win. You know I will. The judge will see you're not competent to make your own decisions, and I'll be appointed guardian anyway. But it'll cost tens of thousands in legal fees. Your money, gone. Your reputation, destroyed. Claire will testify for you and lose anyway, and it'll damage her relationship with me forever. Emma will grow up knowing her family was torn apart in court. He paused. Let that sink in. Or you'd take a few months, get the help you need in a beautiful place, and we all move forward. Your choice. It wasn't a choice. It was a trap with the illusion of options. But I was 63, not stupid. I was forgetful, not incompetent. And I'd been married to a contractor long enough to know when someone was building on a faulty foundation. I need to think about it, I told him. You have 24 hours, he said, and left. That night, I called my lawyer, not the one Claire had found, but the old one, the one David had trusted, who'd helped me quietly build my nest egg over 20 years. His name was Robert Chen, and he was 74 years old and sharp as a tack. Don't sign anything, he said immediately. If you give him medical power of attorney, he can make every decision about your care, your treatment, where you live. And if he's managing your finances under that authority, he can drain your accounts legally. What can I do? There was a long pause. Do you trust me, Maggie? Yes. Then let me make some arrangements, quick ones, and don't tell anyone, not even Claire, what we're doing. Can you do that? I thought of my daughter's worried face, her maxed-out credit card from paying my bills. I thought of Michael's calculated smile, Vanessa's cold eyes. I thought of David, who'd built our kitchen table with his own hands and told me to always read the fine print. Yes, I said, I can do that. The next afternoon, I signed Michael's papers. Not all of them. Robert had me sign a modified version that gave Michael temporary authority only for decisions related to the Portugal facility, with a 60-day sunset clause. Michael's lawyers reviewed it quickly, saw most of what they wanted, and pushed it through. I packed a single suitcase. Claire came over and cried, holding my hands. I'll visit, she promised, as soon as I can save up for a ticket. I'll bring Emma. This is temporary, Mom, just temporary. I hugged her and told her I loved her. I didn't tell her what Robert and I had set in motion. Michael drove me to the airport himself. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone. They'd booked me on a flight to Lisbon, first class, a generous gesture that probably looked good on paper, the devoted son sending his ailing mother to excellent care. At the airport, a woman in scrubs met me at the gate. She was holding a clipboard and wearing a name tag that said Helena, Patient Transport. She smiled at me like I was a child being dropped off for the first day of school. Mrs. Morrison, I'll be accompanying you on the flight, making sure you're comfortable. That's not necessary, I said. It's part of the service, Michael said firmly, kissing my cheek. Safe travels, Mom. We'll talk soon. Helena guided me through security, through the gate, onto the plane. She sat beside me, watching me carefully. When I got up to use the restroom, she followed. When the flight attendant offered me wine, Helena intercepted it. She's on medication, she said pleasantly. I wasn't being accompanied, I was being escorted. Managed. We landed in Lisbon 17 hours later. A van was waiting, the facility's logo on the side. Helena handed me off to 2 other attendants, Portuguese men with kind faces and immovable grip, and they drove me 90 minutes into the countryside. The facility was beautiful, I'll give them that. White stucco buildings, terracotta roofs, gardens with olive trees and lavender. It looked like a resort. It was a hospital, a psychiatric hospital. And the moment I walked through those doors, The moment they took my passport for safekeeping, I understood Michael's real plan. He hadn't sent me here for treatment. He'd sent me here to disappear. The room they gave me was small but clean. A bed, a chair, a window with bars painted white to look decorative, a bathroom with no lock on the door. They took my phone during the adjustment period, took my suitcase to inventory my belongings. I was given medication I didn't need, pills I watched carefully to see if I could avoid swallowing. The staff was polite but firm. When I asked to call my daughter, they said long-distance calls had to be scheduled. When I asked when, they said soon. Always soon. Days blurred. I attended group therapy sessions where I said nothing. I sat in the garden under supervision. I ate meals that were healthy and tasteless. Other patients shuffled past, some genuinely ill, others just warehoused. Difficult family members stashed away where they wouldn't cause trouble or drain resources too quickly. On the 8th day, a nurse named Katerina took pity on me. She was younger than Claire, with sad eyes and careful English. "You don't belong here," she whispered, checking my blood pressure. "I can see it. You are not like the others." "Can you help me call my daughter?" I asked. "Please, just once." She bit her lip, glanced at the door. Then she pulled out her personal phone, a beat-up Android with a cracked screen. "Quickly, 2 minutes." I called Claire. She answered on the first ring, her voice frantic. Mom, is that you? Are you okay? I've been trying to call the facility and they keep saying you're adjusting. You can't take calls yet." "I'm fine," I said quickly. "Listen carefully. Call Robert Chen. Tell him it's time. Tell him I said foundation and frame. He'll know what to do. Don't tell Michael any of this. Do you understand?" "What's happening? Mom, you sound—" "Do you trust me, Claire?" "Of course, but—" "Then trust me now. Make the call. I love you." I hung up before she could argue. Katerina took her phone back, her hands shaking. "You must delete the number," she said. "From the history. They check sometimes." I showed her how. Then I sat back on my narrow bed and waited. What Michael didn't know, what I'd never told anyone except Robert, was that David had taught me more than how to stretch a dollar. He'd taught me about foundations and frame, about building things that lasted, about reading contracts and understanding leverage. And he'd introduced me to Robert Chen 30 years ago, when David was just starting his business and needed someone who understood both construction law and estate planning. Robert had been helping me for 2 decades, not just managing investments, but structuring them carefully. My assets weren't sitting in a simple bank account Michael could freeze. They were distributed across trusts, accounts in different institutions, a small LLC Robert had helped me set up years ago that technically owned my house. The temporary power of attorney Michael had, it gave him access to one account, a checking account with about $40,000 in it, enough to look substantial, to make him feel like he'd won. The rest, the real money, was untouchable without my signature and Robert's co-authorization. And the modified agreement I'd signed before leaving, the one Michael's lawyers had skimmed and approved, it had a 60-day sunset clause, yes, but it also had a specific provision if I was held in a medical facility against my will, or if I was prevented from communicating with outside counsel, the power of attorney was immediately void, and Robert was authorized to act as my emergency guardian. All we needed was proof that I was being held improperly, that I was competent and being detained without legitimate medical cause. Robert had been working on that from the moment Claire called me with my code phrase. He'd hired a Portuguese lawyer, a woman named Dr. Teresa Alvarez, who specialized in elder rights and international patient advocacy. He'd also hired a private psychiatrist, Dr. James Okoye, who'd flown from London to Lisbon to conduct an independent evaluation. I didn't know any of this yet. I just knew to wait, to be calm, to document everything I could in the small notebook Katerina had smuggled to me after our phone call. I wrote down medication dosages, staff names, the times I'd requested to call my family and been refused, the fact that I'd never been evaluated by a psychiatrist here, never given a treatment plan, never told how long my adjustment period would last. On the 16th day, Dr. Alvarez arrived with paperwork and police escort. The facility director sputtered in Portuguese, then broke in English. "This is highly irregular. Mrs. Morrison is here voluntarily, under family arrangement." Mrs. Morrison is a U.S. citizen being held without proper documentation, Dr. Alvarez said crisply. She has not been adjudicated incompetent in any country. She has not signed voluntary admission papers. She is being detained illegally, and if you prevent her from leaving, you will be charged with unlawful imprisonment. They tried to call Michael. He didn't answer. It was 3 a.m. in Connecticut. They tried to call the facility's lawyers. That took 40 minutes. By the time anyone could mount a defense, I was walking out the front door with Dr. Alvarez, climbing into a car, breathing free air. Dr. Okoye was waiting at a hotel in Lisbon. He spent 4 hours with me, conducting cognitive tests, memory assessments, evaluating my decision-making capacity. His report was clear. I had mild cognitive changes consistent with normal aging and early-stage decline, but I was fully competent to make my own medical, financial, and legal decisions. I required no psychiatric intervention, no hospitalization, no guardianship. I was simply 63 years old and occasionally forgetful, like millions of other people who weren't locked away in foreign countries by their children. Robert had already filed emergency motions in Connecticut to dissolve Michael's power of attorney and freeze his access to my accounts. He'd also filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services, alleging financial exploitation and unlawful detention. "Do you want to press charges?" Dr. Alvarez asked gently. "Criminal charges, I mean. What they did to you, it could be prosecuted." I thought about that. About Michael in handcuffs, Vanessa crying in court, about my grandchildren reading news stories about their father. "Not yet," I said. "First, I want to go home." I flew back to Connecticut 5 days later. Robert picked me up from the airport. Claire was waiting at my house, which was still mine, which Michael had been planning to sell, and she threw her arms around me and sobbed. "I didn't know," she kept saying. "I didn't know what he'd done, that he'd sent you to a psychiatric hospital, that they wouldn't let you call." "I know, sweetheart, I know." Tom was there, and Emma, who hugged my legs and asked why I'd been gone so long. I told her I'd been on an adventure, and that I was very happy to be home. Michael showed up 3 hours later. He walked in without knocking, Vanessa behind him, and stopped dead when he saw me sitting at David's kitchen table with Robert and a stack of papers. "You're back," he said, and his voice was careful, controlled. "That's good. We should talk about your care plan." "Sit down, Michael," I said. Something in my tone made him obey. Vanessa perched on the edge of a chair, her designer handbag clutched in her lap like a shield. Robert slid a document across the table. "Your power of attorney has been dissolved by emergency court order. You have no access to your mother's finances, medical decisions, or property. Further, Mrs. Morrison has filed a formal complaint with Adult Protective Services alleging financial exploitation and unlawful imprisonment." Michael's face went white. "That's ridiculous. I was trying to help." "You placed your cognitively sound mother in a psychiatric facility in a foreign country, prevented her from contacting family or legal counsel, and attempted to gain control of her estate through misrepresentation of her mental capacity. The facility has confirmed you paid in advance for 6 months of care." 6 months, Michael. How long were you planning to keep her there? Vanessa stood up. "We're not listening to this. We were acting in Maggie's best interest." "Sit down," I said. And my voice was David's voice, the one that had commanded construction crews and negotiated contracts. Both of you. They sat. I looked at my son, my firstborn, the baby I'd nursed and raised and sacrificed for, and barely recognized him. You tried to have me declared incompetent to steal my money, I said quietly. You locked me away in a hospital where I didn't speak the language, where I had no rights, no phone, no way to get help. You told Claire I was adjusting while you paid for 6 months of imprisonment. What was the plan, Michael? Keep me there until I actually went crazy? Until I signed whatever you wanted just to be free? Or were you hoping I'd just fade away somewhere convenient? Mom, it wasn't like that. Don't lie to me. Not now. I've seen the bank records, the calls you made to my financial institutions, the guardianship paperwork. I know exactly what this was. Vanessa was crying, mascara running down her cheeks. Michael's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to withdraw all your legal filings immediately. You're going to sign a legal agreement that you will never attempt to gain guardianship, power of attorney, or any control over my affairs again. You're going to pay back the $40,000 you withdrew from the account I gave you access to, with interest. And if we don't? Michael asked, his voice brittle. Then I press criminal charges, elder abuse, unlawful imprisonment, financial exploitation. I have documentation from Portuguese police, from medical experts, from the facility itself. I have proof you lied about my condition to multiple institutions. You could be prosecuted in 2 countries, Michael, and even if you avoid jail time, the publicity alone would destroy you. Vanessa's family wouldn't survive the scandal, would they? How would it look in your social circles, your country clubs, that you imprisoned your widowed mother in a psychiatric hospital to steal her money? The room was silent except for Vanessa's quiet crying. But that's not what I want, I said, and my voice softened just a little. What I want is very simple. I want my life back, my independence, my dignity, my home. I want to see my grandchildren, your children, Michael, without supervision, without your permission. I want to have lunch with Emma without wondering if you're going to use that as evidence of something. I want to be treated like a human being, not an asset to be managed. I slid another paper across the table. This is a restraining order, not a permanent one, just temporary. It prevents you from coming to my home, accessing my medical records, or contacting my financial institutions. You can call before you visit. You can be part of this family if you choose to be, but you'll do it with respect, or you won't do it at all. Michael stared at the paper. Then he looked up at me, and for just a second, I saw something crack behind his eyes. Fear, maybe? Or shame? Or just the realization that his mother wasn't who he'd thought she was. Sign it, I said, or leave and face the consequences. Your choice. He signed it. So did Vanessa, her signature shaky and smudged. They left without another word. That was 3 months ago. Michael transferred the $40,000 back within a week. His lawyers filed all the withdrawal paperwork Robert requested. The guardianship case was dismissed. My bank accounts were unfrozen. My life, my real life, resumed. I still take my medication for cognitive decline. I still forget things sometimes. Appointments, where I put my reading glasses, the name of the neighbor 2 doors down. Claire still checks on me 3 times a week, but now it's just visits, just time together. She brings Emma over and we bake cookies, the way my mother used to bake with me. I had my own psychiatric evaluation done here in Connecticut with a geriatric specialist. The diagnosis is the same. Early-stage cognitive changes, manageable, not requiring any form of institutionalization or guardianship. I'm capable of living independently for years yet, maybe decades. I just need to be organized, careful, supported. I need family, real family. Michael has called twice. Brief, awkward conversations where he asks how I'm doing and I answer politely. He hasn't apologized, not in words anyway, But last week, a card arrived for my birthday, signed by him and Vanessa and the grandchildren. Inside was a gift certificate to a restaurant I like, and a note in Michael's handwriting. Maybe we could have lunch sometime, if you're willing. I haven't responded yet. I don't know if I will. Claire says I should forgive him, that he's still my son, that family is family. And she's right, in her way. He is my son. I did raise him, love him, sacrifice for him. But some betrayals change the foundation of who we are to each other. Some breaks don't heal cleanly. Maybe we'll have lunch someday. Maybe I'll sit across from Michael at that restaurant and try to rebuild something smaller than what we had before, something more honest. Maybe he'll apologize, really apologize and mean it. Maybe his children will grow up knowing their grandmother, and I'll get to be part of their lives in some small way. Or maybe I'll decide that the family I have, Claire and Tom and Emma, the chosen people who showed up when I needed them, is enough. More than enough. I'm 63 years old. I forget things sometimes, but I remember the important things. I remember who I am, what I'm worth, and what I deserve. I remember that David built our kitchen table to last, solid and square and level. And that's the kind of foundation you can't tear down, no matter how hard someone tries. If this emotional story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family, resilience, and finding strength when it matters most. Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever had to stand up to family? How did you find the courage? Let's support each other in the conversation below.